We are going to discuss the first chapter, which is called as the third label, written by Jack Finney. Uh, so, if you talk about third label, means what is that actually? The third label, which is written by Jack Finney, is about the harsh realities. Means बहुत ही खराब रियलिटीज ऑफ किसके ऊपर है ना, वॉर के ऊपर है, राइट. सो किस हिसाब से वॉर के ऊपर एक मीन्स हार्श रियलिटी प्रेजेंट किया गया है ना. द ऑथर पॉइंटेड दैट कि किस हिसाब से वॉर हैज इरिवर्सिबली. इरिवर्सिबल का मतलब होता है कि समथिंग विच कैन नॉट रिवर्स, और समथिंग विच इज कॉल्ड एज अल्टीमेट, or something which is called as a final consequences, right? Therefore, the war is something which is leaving people in a state of insecurity. So war के वजह से लोगों का होता क्या है, मीन्स दे वर नॉट लिविंग इन द सेफ्टी. सिक्योरिटी में वो मीन्स सिक्योरिटी और सेफ्टी में वो जी नहीं पाते, right? So it is also about modern day problems and how the common man to escape reality by various means. So अगर देखा जाए ये पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक किसके ऊपर है, मीन्स एक हार्श रियलिटी. हार्श का मतलब होता है कि बहुत ही खराब मीन्स रियलिटी के ऊपर है. और ये जो हार्श रियलिटी किसको पॉइंट आउट कर रहा है, वॉर के बेस पे. एंड यहाँ पे ये भी कहा जा रहा है कि वॉर हैज समथिंग विच इज द अल्टीमेट कंसिक्वेंसेस. अल्टीमेट कंसिक्वेंसेस का मतलब होता है कि फाइनल रिजल्ट that actually make, or that actually leaving people in a state of instability, insecurity, and unsafe. So one has also considered that what means this third level is also indicating about the modern day problem. So first is called as a harsh realities of the war. The second one is called as a modern day problems. Modern day problems and how the common man means desires or called as a tends to escape reality by various means. Escape reality means doesn't want to accept the practical things, right? So practical things that come in a variety of ways. So अगर देखा जाए, in this particular story or the third level referred to a man whose name is called as a Charley, right? So जिसमें एक problem है that called as a hallucinates and reaches the third level of the Grand Central Station, which only has two levels. Now, if you see that the stories begins with the means two of the thought. One is called as a harsh realities of the war. Second thing is called as a not to accept the modern day realities, right, of the various means. And the author pointing an example of a person whose name is called as a means Charley, right? जिसमें एक hallucinate or hallucination, you can say that hallucinates or hallucination है किसको लेके, means जो कि ड्रीमिंग करता रहता है, और means who reaches to the third level of the Grand Central Station, right? So which only has two labels. Now when we read that, means the third label seems like a gaming one, right? So the author here presenting the story that revolves around a 31-year-old man. So एक 31 साल का मीन्स आदमी के ऊपर दिया गया है जिसका नाम है चार्ली. So who experienced something like a weird. Weird means called as odd or strange. So जो कि एक मीन्स अलग ही अनुभूति उसके अंदर आया है. So the story begins with the idea called as a one day after work, means coming from the subway. right? I hope you understand the meaning of subway, aren't you? Do you understand the meaning of subway?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by subway? What do you mean by subway?
Sir, subway means like
A tunnel.
exactly, but tunnel type of tunnel thing.
Yeah, it is a tunnel under a road for use of pedestrian. तो आप अगर कहोगे कि भुवनेश्वर में बहुत सारे सबवे हैं, राइट, सो जो कि पेडेस्ट्रियन के लिए है, जो कि रोड के मीन्स रोड के नीचे ही होता है, राइट, और यू कैन से दैट अंडर पास भी हम उसको कहते हैं, राइट. सो द ऑथर स्टेटेड दैट मीन्स चार्ली के बारे में ही डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, और चार्ली का एज 31 ईयर्स है, और जो कि एक्सपीरियंस कर रहा है कुछ वेट तरीके से. मीन्स एक दिन क्या हुआ कि अपना काम खत्म करके जब वो मीन्स सबवे में आ रहा था, सो ही रीच्ड द थर्ड लेवल ऑफ द ग्रैंड सेंट्रल स्टेशन. ही रीच्ड द थर्ड लेवल ऑफ द ग्रैंड सेंट्रल स्टेशन, मीन्स जो कि कभी था ही नहीं, राइट, विच डज नॉट एक्चुअली एग्जिस्ट, राइट. तो इसका मतलब क्या है, वो ड्रीम कर रहा है. he reminiscence he reminiscence the entire experience. reminiscence का मतलब होता है कि रिकलेक्ट करना. तो वो इमेजिन कर रहा है और रिकलेक्ट कर रहा है कि पूरा का पूरा एक्सपीरियंस with his psychiatrist friend Sam, right? So means he was telling all such kind of a thing to whom? Na to his psychiatrist friend जिसका नाम Sam था, right? Charlie thought he experienced time travel. So उसको लग रहा है कि वो means time travel कर रहा है, मतलब पीछे जा रहा है या तो आगे जा रहा है, right? And had reached somewhere in something called as in the 1890, right, 1890s, right, 1890s means somehow called as 1890, right. So a time before the world saw two of its most deadliest wars. तो अगर देखा जाए जो वर्ल्ड वॉर वन, वर्ल्ड वॉर टू उसके बाद हुए थे, राइट. तो चार्ली के दिमाग में किस चीज के बारे में आया है, मतलब मीन्स वर्ल्ड वॉर वन और टू से पहले, right, 1890s में, means he found himself's presence, right. So he stated about that what means he was the evident of the deadliest wars. Deadliest wars means that World War One and World War Two, right. So means the author also pointed that as soon as he realized what time he is in, right, he immediately decided to buy 2 tickets to Galesburg. So Galesburg, Illinois. So one for himself and the other for his wife. Now see that. Unfortunately, what happened? The currency used in that century was different. That means you could find out that you were in the modern day, right? And on the basis of the time travel, you went back to the past. Now, at that time, the currency would be different uh, because it was the timing of 19th century, 1890. So, and you were in the 21st or 22nd century, right? So on the basis of that, the currency you used at present would not be means even discovered at that time. So in that case, means at that time also the currency was completely different. Therefore, means what happened here? The next day he withdrew all his savings and got them converted, even if meant bearing losses, right? So it means the amount that you have had and you convert into another currency. So what will happen? Obviously, either you degrade your present value of money, or maybe called as you increase your present value of money, right? So what happened here? He withdrew all his savings and got them converted, even if it meant bearing losses. He went looking for the third level but failed to find it. So it worried his wife and the psychiatrist friend Sam, who told him that he is hallucinating. Right. Now, when you talk about hallucinating, means called as a kind of a dreaming, right? In order to take refuge or called as a kind of a fear, is hallucinating in order to take refuge from reality and miseries of the modern world, which is full of worry. So why do people get into the kind of a hallucination? So that is what means who Sam, who is the friend of Charlie, pointed here. So, if I am talking about the kind of a hallucination he have, is something called as an experience, right? So, or called as a kind of a perception. ये एक experience होता है या तो ये एक perception होता है जो कि actually present नहीं है. So ये means हम कह सकते हैं कि वहम, right? This could be called as a kind of a वहम, means something which is not exist but you think about it, right? ये जो वहम क्यों होता है ना, that may be for the reason of what, ना for the reason of the surrounding, जो कि change होता रहता है, या तो means you suffer from a kind of a mental miseries, right? So you try to escape yourself from the reality and the miseries of the modern world. So, which is full of worry, right? Charlie therefore resort to his stamp collection. So, Charlie therefore, what did he do? Now, resort to his stamp collection in order to uh, distract himself when suddenly one day he finds a letter from his friend Sam, who had gone missing recently. Right. Sam wrote that he always wanted to believe in the idea of third level, and now that he is there himself, he encourages Charlie and Luisa. Who is Luisa? No, Luisa is his wife, to never stop looking for it. He encourages Charlie and Luisa to never stop uh, looking for it. Now, that is what you would find out a kind of a interesting and the mystery behind this, the third level, right? So, the whole story is representing किसके ऊपर है, चार्ली के ऊपर ही है. चार्ली जो कि 31 years main, right? So who have the wife called Luisa, and his friend is called as a Sam, and Charlie was suffering from a kind of a problem that's called as a hallucination. Now let me go bit by bit, and we'll discuss the complete text. uh, yeah. So the story begins with is the presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven, and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two. Now here, if you see that the word called as a stack का मतलब क्या होता है कि a pile of object, typically one that is neatly arranged. तो यहाँ पे ये point out किया जा रहा है, the presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford railroads, so who will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two, but I say there are three, right? So, because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station, yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist friend of mine, among others. I told him about the third level at the Grand Central Station, and he said it was a waking dream with fulfillment. He said I was unhappy. So that made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. And that I just want to escape. Well, who doesn't? Everybody I know wants to escape, but they don't wander down into any third level at Grand Central Station. Now, if you observe that the author pointed certain words, he pointed about that the president will swear on us, means uh, couple of what timetables, means that's something called as a couple of means arranged meeting, right? Or you can say that timetables referring to a schedule, the departure and arrival time of trains, right, buses or aircraft. So it is also stated that means uh, it is also indicated about the mention of a third level. So third level at the Grand Central Station means and ये जो थर्ड लेवल एट द ग्रैंड सेंट्रल स्टेशन है, सो वहां पे सिर्फ टू ही लेबल्स है इन रियलिटी. The story begins with a what means the mention of a third label. So at the Grand Central Station, so which have actually two labels. So the main character here, so who is aware that even the president of New York Central and the New York, New Haven and Hartford Railroads would express great confidence in the existence of only two labels, but he himself has been टू द थर्ड लेवल. मतलब उसको लग रहा है कि मीन्स भले ही प्रेसिडेंट ने दो ही लेवल को इनैग्रेट किया है, राइट, सो लेकिन उसको लग रहा है कि मीन्स वो थर्ड लेवल में है, राइट, थर्ड लेवल ऑफ द ग्रैंड सेंट्रल. सो कंसिडरिंग द एंटायर सिनेरियो, कंसिडरिंग द एंटायर सिचुएशन, चार्ली जो कि यहाँ का मेन कैरेक्टर है, हु हैड अ वर्ड विथ हिज साइकेट्रिस्ट फ्रेंड, जिसके बारे में हमने डिस्कस किया, जिसका नाम है सैम. He explained that. Who explained that? Means his friend, that Charlie was experiencing a nothing but a hallucination. So hallucination का मतलब क्या होता है कि means कोई कुछ चीजों की वजह से he was mentally suffering. So he was just observing the waking dream with a fulfillment, or in other words, means he was suffering from the hallucination. According to the psychiatrist friend Sam, Sam means Sam जो कि चार्ली का friend है, so he was unhappy, right? You would find out that means Charlie was also unhappy and he was also unhappy, right? Because he found that his friend was suffering from such kind of a thing, and Charlie was unhappy because his wife, whose name is called as means what is the name of his wife, means Luisa. So Luisa did not like this, right, the kind of a behavior of Charlie. Upon explaining further, it became clear that it is the burden of all the modern problems. So कभी कभी क्या होता है कि घर में बहुत सारे प्रॉब्लम होने की वजह से मीन्स लोगों का जो बिहेवियर होता है वो धीरे धीरे चेंज होने लगता है. जैसे कि वो भूल जाते हैं या तो कोई अलग सा चीज सोचने लगते हैं एंड डिस्टर्ब भी होते रहते हैं. सो उस हिसाब से देखा जाए मीन्स सैम का ये कहना है कि चार्ली was unhappy. He was suffering from some kind of a modern problems, and that is pushing him to experience the clear perception of something which is not present. So जो कि उसको फोर्स कर रहा है कि वो ऐसा कुछ चीजें देखे जो कि एक्चुअली प्रेजेंट नहीं है. He tends to escape the reality. So Charlie means reality से भाग रहा है. Charlie agree with what his psychiatrist friend had to say, but he still found it a bit odd. लेकिन फिर भी उसको लग रहा था कि मीन्स कहीं ना कहीं कुछ गलत है, right, strange है. So means something which is still he found a bit odd, right? So to have been to the third level of the Grand Central Station, right? So, but that is the region, he said, and he also pointed. My friends all agreed. Everything points to it. They claimed my stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refugee from reality. So, well, maybe, but my grandfather did not need any refugee from reality. Things were pretty nice and peaceful in his day. From all I hear, and he started my collection. Right? It is a nice collection too. Blocks of four of practically over every US issue, first day covers, and so on. President Roosevelt. So he was called as a 32 president, uh, so whose name is called as a uh, uh, Francis Delano Roosevelt. Right, he was the 32 president of America. So President Roosevelt collected stamps too, you know. So here the here the means a man, Charlie, begins to believe in the possibility that he has been experiencing all this to escape the harsh realities of the modern world. तो उसको भी धीरे धीरे समझ में आने लगा कि मीन्स कि वो ये सारी जो चीजें एक्सपीरियंस कर रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ व्हाट ना टू एस्केप फ्रॉम द modern world's harsh reality. So his friends agreed to it as well, right? So उसके दोस्त भी मीन्स सही मानने लगे. Even his stamp collecting is a sort of asylum, right? So अगर देखा जाए मीन्स वो जब भी प्रॉब्लम से मीन्स एस्केप करना चाहता था तो वो हमेशा क्या करता था, स्टैम्प कलेक्शन करता था, राइट? एंड इट इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ asylum. So what do you mean by asylum? The meaning of asylum is called as to make himself means lonely. So he researched to in order to feel protected. तो उसको लगता था कि मीन्स अगर मैं स्टाम्प कलेक्शन करूं या तो कोई एक चीज करूं तो जिससे उसका माइंड बिजी रहेगा या तो एंगेज रहेगा. On the other hand, he starts thinking otherwise. His grandfather started his stamp collection, but in those days, they had not seen the consequences of war and there was peace, harmony and security. तो वो अपने मीन्स ग्रैंडफादर का एग्जाम्पल लेके पॉइंट आउट करता था कि कि उस जमाने में उसके मीन्स जो ग्रैंडफादर थे वो क्या करते थे, स्टैम्प कलेक्शन करते थे. And they had not seen the kind of a result of war and there was peace. उस समय भी उनका क्या था, मीन्स पीस था और सिक्योरिटी था. His grandfather must have not been insecure. तो उसके ग्रैंडफादर भी मीन्स इनसिक्योर नहीं थे, वो भी तो अपने आप को इन्वॉल्व करते थे मीन्स स्टैम्प कलेक्शन से, राइट? सो एंड why? No, because the collection was moreover amazing and with blocks of four of practically every US issue. Even President Roosevelt collected stamps. So he was giving example of different people, right, who engaged in a activity in an activity called as a stamp collection. तो चार्ली का ये पॉइंट आउट करना था कि मुझे जो बोला जा रहा है कि मैं स्टाम्प कलेक्शन इसीलिए कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि अपने माइंड को एंगेज रख सकूं और आई सपोज टू स्टे इन अ लोनली प्लेस और आई डोंट वांट टू डील विद द मींस काइंड ऑफ अ प्रॉब्लम, मॉडर्न डे प्रॉब्लम. सो इट वाज ऑल नथिंग बट अ मींस रॉन्ग, राइट? क्योंकि उसके हिसाब से उसके ग्रैंडफादर एंड मींस हु यूएस प्रेसिडेंट रूजवेल्ट वो भी मींस क्या करते थे ना, दे वर आल्सो कलेक्टिंग स्टैम्प. Anyway, here is what happened at the Grand Central. One night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment. So I decided to take the subway from Grand Central. Why? Now, because it is faster than the bus. So Charlie here starts explaining what exactly happened and begins with how he chose to take the means underground, right? So subway to his apartment instead of the means taking bus after a late night shift. So he did this in order to what? Now, in order to save the time. Now, you if you see that means I don't know why this should have happened to me. तो मीन्स उसके हिसाब से ये क्यों हुआ, राइट? he didn't know about it. So I'm just an ordinary guy named Charlie, 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit. Gabardine. So tan gabardine means called as a smooth, durable means you can say that cotton cloth. right? Smooth, durable cotton cloth. So that is what called as a, means I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. I passed a dozen men who looked just like me, and I was not trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to Luisa, my wife. So, means the author pointed that how Charlie describes himself. So he describes himself as an ordinary man of 31 and dressed in a, means a gabardine, that's something called as a suit with a, means a durable one, and a straw hat with a fancy band. It was so ordinary, ये इतना ordinary था that he could see other similar men at the station. उसको भी लगा कि बाकी जो लोग हैं वो भी उसी टाइप के ही हैं और वो भी वही स्टेशन में ही हैं. He explains how he was in his normal state of mind, not wanting to escape from anywhere. So उसने अपने आप को जस्टिफाई भी करने की कोशिश की कि he was not trying to escape from any situation. All he wanted was to be with his wife Louisa at that hour. So means जब वो आ रहा था, he found himself and other people and they were same, uh, but he did not make any kind of a reaction. So he wanted to leave that place because he wanted to go to his house and to meet his wife, uh, or to be with his wife, तो जिसका नाम लुइजा है. He still does not understand why this happened with him. तो उसको means समझ में भी नहीं आ रहा था कि ये सारी चीज उसके साथ हो क्यों रहा है. So I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue. So, and I turned into Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level. And where you take trains like the 20th century, then I walked down another flight to the second level, where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway heading for the subway and got lost. And that's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I'm always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. Once I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. Another time, I came up in an office building on 46th Street, 3 blocks away. Now, observe that यहाँ पे जो point out किया जा रहा है, so Charlie, who comes to the part of the incident, right, who experienced the part of the incident where he entered the Grand Central. वो ग्रैंड सेंट्रल को एंट्री किया, बट कहाँ से ना, वैंडरबिल्ट एवेन्यू से, right? So, and took the stairs to the first level. So it was nothing but the first level for him, where one boarded where one boarded trains like the 20th century. So जिस हिसाब से 20th century में लोग means ट्रेन को means ट्रेन पकड़ते हैं, तो उस हिसाब से फर्स्ट लेवल में means he found out that he reached to the place and boarded the trains like the people uh, do it in the 20th century. Then he went down another floor. He went down another floor to reach the second level, right, where the suburban trains leave. Suburban trains means that called as a residential trains, right? So residential trains leave. From there he entered an arched doorway. So when you talk about arched doorway, it means called as a curve. So there is a kind of a means a way to means there is a kind of a doorway which is nothing but made of curve, right? And he entered an arched doorway and got lost. So it was nothing unusual for him, because even if he had come to that station 1,000 times, so भले ही वो बार बार उस स्टेशन को आता है, there were occasions he bumped into new corridors and doorways. वो हमेशा एक नए नए corridors, you understand, that's something called as a path, and doorways. So नए नए पाथ एंड नए नए doorways उसको मिलता है और वहां पे वो मीन्स there he got into the strike. Once he entered the wrong lobby and reached Roosevelt Hotel, and another time in an office building which was 3 blocks away. So he was giving a kind of a statement here. यहाँ पे और एक स्टेटमेंट वो दे रहा है कि किस हिसाब से वो एक बार मीन्स रॉन्ग रिसेप्शन एरियाज में घुस गया था. सो एंड घुसते घुसते वो कहाँ पे घुस गया था, रूजवेल्ट के होटल में, राइट, रूजवेल्ट होटल में. एंड अनदर टाइम, और एक टाइम पे तो वो मीन्स ही एंटर्ड इन एन ऑफिस बिल्डिंग विच वाज 3 blocks अवे, जो कि 3 ब्लॉक के बाद आता है. सो उस ऑफिस में वो घुस गया था. समटाइम्स आई थिंक मीन्स ही ऑल्सो पॉइंटेड, समटाइम्स आई थिंक ग्रैंड सेंट्रल इज ग्रोइंग लाइक अ ट्री. ग्रैंड सेंट्रल इज ग्रोइंग लाइक अ ट्री, pushing out new corridors, right, and staircases like roots. There is probably a long tunnel, right, that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now, on its way to Times Square, and maybe another to Central Park, and maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been unexist. Grand Central has been unexist means Grand Central will be called as a means a place to come out, a way of escape. Maybe that is how the tunnel I got into. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. तो यहाँ पे अगर देखा जाए, चार्ली wondered that Grand Central was nothing but a big one, expanding, और धीरे धीरे मीन्स ग्रैंड सेंट्रल ग्रो कर रहा है या तो स्प्रेड कर रहा है बहुत ही फास्ट रेट में. जैसे कि एक ट्री अपने रूट्स को स्प्रेड करता है सॉइल में, उस हिसाब से ग्रैंड सेंट्रल भी मीन्स एक पर्टिकुलर प्लेस है जो कि बहुत ही मीन्स फास्ट क्या हो रहा है, स्प्रेड हो रहा है, एक्सपैंड हो रहा है. सो but at the same time, it is not a big deal that they even have a secret tunnel under the city, right? तो इवन यहाँ पे ये भी कहा जा रहा है कि मीन्स सीक्रेट टनल भी है सिटी के अंदर, राइट, और सिटी के नीचे. So that will go towards the Times Square, or maybe it goes to the Central Park. So चार्ली को ये फील होता है कि it might be because Grand Central is a place of exist for innumerable people. So Grand Central एक ऐसा जगह है जहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोग रहते हैं. So means Charlie even managed to escape reality, right? So इवन चार्ली कोशिश भी कर रहा है कि वो किस हिसाब से रियलिटी से भाग सके, बिकॉज ऑफ द सेम रीजन, although he never shared it with his psychiatrist, right? So the corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong. But I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps, and I did not pass a soul. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead. That means open space and people talking. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. For just a moment, I thought I was back on the second level. So, but I saw the room was smaller. There were fewer tickets, windows, fewer tickets windows or ticket windows and train gates. And the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. And the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleep protectors. The lights were dim and sort of flickering. Then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. Then I saw why they were open flame gas lights. Now, if you observe carefully, uh, the author pointed some kind of a unusual activities, unusual means hindrance, barriers, so or unusual corridor. So कुछ कॉरिडोर के बारे में और कुछ पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट के बारे में एंड कुछ ऐसे डिस्क्रिप्शन दे रहे हैं उस प्लेस के बारे में जो कि कंप्लीटली ऑकवर्ड है, सो और कंप्लीटली स्ट्रेंज है. सो लुक इनटू इट. यहाँ पे ये कहा जा रहा है द अनयूजुअल कॉरिडोर ही हैड एंटर्ड into begin angling left, so or moving left and slanting downward and going downward, so which he felt odd about, but nevertheless he kept on walking. So भले ही वो कॉरिडोर मीन्स जो लेफ्ट साइड जाके डाउनवर्ड जाता हो, राइट, ही फेल्ट ऑड, उनको और लगा उस प्लेस के बारे में, बट वो चलते ही जा रहे थे. So there was no one except him and the voice of his fit echoed, so it seems like he was alone. उनको लग रहा है कि वो ही अकेले हैं और वो ही धीरे धीरे चलते ही जा रहे हैं. He finally heard the sound of people talking from a distance. So उनको लगा कुछ देर जाने के बाद he found out that कि कुछ लोग means बातें कर रहे हैं. Then he took a left and walked down the stairs. Again only to reach the third level of the Grand Central. So he realized that where he was, now he was in the Grand Central. So, and it was nothing but the third level of the Grand Central. So he thought he had somehow made his way back to the second level, but as he noticed, the room was smaller. तो उनको लगा कि वो मीन्स पीछे छोड़ दिए हैं सेकेंड लेवल को, बट जब वो नोटिस किए उनको लगा कि मीन्स रूम थोड़ा छोटा था. देयर वेर fewer tickets windows and train gates and the information booth. So we were talking about what? Grand Central के बारे में बोल रहे हैं और मीन्स जहां से वो ट्रेन को बोर्ड करते हैं, right? So the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. The man in the booth was also different and जो स्टेशन भी था that was dim lit, मतलब अंधेरा अंधेरा जैसा लग रहा था. For there were open flame gas lights. So it means it was completely talking about the old time, right? So there were brass spittoons. So brass spittoons का मतलब होता है कि a metal or earthenware pot typically having a funnel shaped top used for spitting into, right? So एक मीन्स फनल शेप्ड करके रखा जाता था जिसमें मीन्स आप स्पीट कर पाते हो, राइट. So there were brass spittoons on the floor, and across the station, a glint of light, right? Glint of light caught my eye. So glint means that called as a shining of light came out, and uh, means that I could see. A man was pulling a gold watch, right, from his vest pocket. So एक आदमी अपने pocket से क्या means gold watch को निकाल रहा है. He snapped open the cover, right? So and he opened the cover of that watch, looked at his watch and frowned. और गुस्से से मीन्स घड़ी को देखने के बाद मीन्स ही गॉट फ्राउंड. फ्राउंड का मतलब होता है गुस्सा होना. ही ओर अ डर्बी hat. He wore a derby hat, a black four-button suit with a tiny lapels. Now the author was narrating or describing means the person who whom the man Charley saw it in a different gesture or different means attire, so a different getup. So means how did he find out the man means where? So he found out that the man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. So he opened the cover of the watch. He looked at his watch and got anger. He wore a and the person was means the person wore a means derby hat. Derby hat is a kind of a hat, a black four-button suit with tiny lapels on that suit, and he had a big black handlebar mustache, right? Or mustache. Mustache means called as a mooch. Right. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890. Right. Means he found out the people who around him was wearing the means or were wearing the 1890 dress code. I never saw so many beards, sideburns, and fancy masters in my life. So the author wanted to point out Charlie was never experiencing such kind of a means appearance, right? He stated about that how the people were wearing uh, the kind of a 1980 sorry 1890 dress, and the kind of appearance look like they all have the beards, they means all have a fancy mustache, so the kind of suit they wore, right? The Charlie also pointed that a woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with a leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high button shoes. So back of her, out on the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive. So when you say that locomotive, the meaning of locomotive is called as a powered railway vehicle used for pulling trains. So that is what called as a locomotive, means a powered railway vehicle which is pulling to the trains, right? A very small carriers and Ives locomotive with a stack funnel shaped stack. And then I knew to make sure I walked over a new newsboy and looked at the stack of papers at his feet. Stack of papers means called as a pile of papers or gathering of paper at his feet. It was the world, and the world has not been published for years. The world means the name of the newspaper is called as the world, and the world has not been published for years. The lead story said, the lead story or the main story said something about President Cleveland. Means at that time, the who was the president? So the president name was Cleveland. I have found that front page since in the uh, public library files, sorry, and it was printed June 11, 1894. Now, you could see that what Charlie pointed, how the condition of the Charlie was, right? So, means Charlie was thinking about what? Past, and he was living in the present, but thinking about the past. So, Charlie could, अगर देखा जाए, Charlie possibly see brass spittoons everywhere, and when suddenly a glimpse of light caught his eye, and he saw a man pulling his gold watch from the west. So obviously the light came out from the gold watch. So वो आदमी मीन्स किस हिसाब से ड्रेस हुआ है, ओल्ड फैशन स्टाइल, तो मीन्स चार्ली को और भी बाकी सारे लोग उसी टाइप के ही लगे, जैसे कि 19th सेंचुरी. इट वाज बेसिकली द टाइम बिफोर डेडली वॉर्स. तो यहाँ पे बहुत सारे लोगों का जो अपीयरेंस था वो डिफरेंट था. बियर्ड्स था, फैंसी डेकोरेटिव मॉस्टर्स था ऑल अराउंड, एंड मीन्स जिस टाइप का जिस टाइप का अपीयरेंस था, सो जो कि चार्ली के कभी भी मीन्स एक्सपीरियंस नहीं किया था. सो उसने और भी देखा कि कैसे मीन्स small careers and I locomotive train which is pulling to the other trains, right? So वहां पे उसको लगा, right, कि वो किस जमाने में मीन्स ही वाज इन द पास्ट, राइट? सो अपने जो डाउट को वो ट्रूथ मीन्स टू मेक इट true, to validate to his suspicion, he went over to the newspaper boy. So us means what do you say that means, to make himself verified, to make himself out of that suspicion. So what did he do? Now he went towards that newspaper boy and who was selling newspaper. So he got the newspaper and there it was written the name of the newspaper called as the World. जैसे कि हमारा न्यूज़पेपर टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया हो या तो द हिंदू है, उस हिसाब से उस न्यूज़पेपर का नाम द वर्ल्ड था। जो न्यूज़पेपर बहुत साल हो गया कि डिसकंटिन्यू हो गया था, राइट? सो मीन्स दैट न्यूज़पेपर ही फाउंड, राइट? क्योंकि मॉडर्न डे में वो न्यूज़पेपर पब्लिश नहीं हो रहा था। सो आज चार्ली पास्ट में आ गया है, तो उस हिसाब से उसको न्यूज़पेपर मीन्स वो न्यूज़पेपर मिला जो न्यूज़पेपर डिसकंटिन्यू हो गया था, बहुत साल हो गया। देयर वर सम हेडलाइंस अबाउट द देन प्रेसिडेंट क्लीवलैंड। सो उस न्यूज़पेपर में मीन्स प्रेसिडेंट क्लीवलैंड के बारे में लिखा गया था। द डेट on the front page was also called as June 11, 1894. So he was now sure that what? Now he was in the past. So after that it is stated, I turned towards, it's a big one. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central, I could buy tickets that would take Louisa, his wife, and me anywhere in the United States. He wanted to go in the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. So, have you ever been there? It's a question. It's a wonderful town still. So Charlie was describing this with big old frame house, huge lawns, and tremendous trees, huge trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long, and people sat out in their lawns. Means it was describing the Grand Central, the men smoking cigars and talking slowly or quietly. The women waving palm leaf fans with the fireflies all around in a peaceful world. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and World War II over 40 years in the future. I wanted 2 tickets for that. So, means it is stated, तो यहाँ पे ये पॉइंट आउट होता है कि किस हिसाब से चार्ली रियलाइज्ड और वेरीफाइड हुआ कि वो पास्ट में ही है। तो इमीडिएटली उसने क्या किया, मीन्स वो टिकट विंडो के पास गया जहां से वो टिकट खरीदने के लिए मीन्स खरीदना चाहता था। सो टू गेट द टिकट्स फॉर हुम, फॉर टू गेट द टिकट्स फॉर हिमसेल्फ एंड हिज वाइफ। क्यों ना ही वांटेड टू दे वांट ही वांटेड टू गो टू गेल्सबर्ग इलिनॉइस, राइट? सो क्यों? क्योंकि गेल्सबर्ग इलिनॉइस एक बहुत सुंदर सा टाउन है, मीन्स जो कि कवर है ग्रीनरी वेजिटेशन से, अ लॉट ऑफ ग्रीनरी वेजिटेशन। सो उसको ये भी पक्का मालूम है कि he was also well aware that from here means from that particular place one could buy tickets that would take them anywhere in the United States. कोई भी मीन्स टिकट खरीद सकता है जो कि यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स के बहुत सारे डिफरेंट डिफरेंट जगह को वो जा सकता है। ही डिस्क्राइब्स हाउ थिंग्स वेर इन 1984। उसने मीन्स डिस्क्राइब भी किया कि 1984 में मीन्स किस हिसाब से वो एरिया था, राइट? और बिफोर हाउ थिंग्स वेर इन 1984 बिफोर द टू वर्ल्ड वॉर्स टुक प्लेस, right? So evenings were twice, 2 times as long as they are now, and men and women living in peace and serenity. तो अगर देखा जाए means 1984, it means what? Now two of the world wars took place, and during that time you would find out the condition of the weather which was different from the present condition, present weather condition. So Charlie stated that evenings were 2 times as long as they are now. तो जिस हिसाब से प्रेजेंट का वेदर कंडीशन है, सो उस टाइम पे मीन्स इट्स समहाउ कॉल्ड एज 2 times long. And men and women were living in a peace and serenity. Peace and serenity का मतलब होता है कि they were living